If it isn't Mr. Rookie of the Month.
Damian Lillard got traded. To the Bucks. Damn. They finna win. Hey, what's up? A foul.
Shooting two.
Yeesh.
Screen, screen, screen.
It went to D. Rosen. Call a timeout on me. Dang. Should have made that, definitely. Too big. Damn. That's crazy, man. Damn.
We got some NBA basketball out there.
We got some NBA basketball out there.
Three, two, one, ignition. Three, two, one, ignition. We got liftoff. Three, two, one, ignition.
All right, this is from SpaceX's website. They have almost 7 million subscribers. And I'm gonna show you something. All right, hold on. Before I get back to 2K, let's watch this video real quick. All right, you see, it's a real video uploaded 2 years ago. I mean, it's from SpaceX. I watched this video 2 years ago, but I didn't notice anything weird. Then I watched it 2 years later, and then now it looks like this. It looks weird. If you see something, tell me. If not, then, that's fine. Let's see if the video will play now.
3, 2, 1.
Actually, hold on. Let me see if I can get it in the highest quality that I can. Let's do 1440p for the sake of the video. All right, look at this.
3, 2, 1, ignition. We got liftoff.
Look at that CGI. That was supposed to pass as real 2 years ago. And 2 years ago, it did pass as real. Nobody noticed it 2 years ago. We'll watch it again in a smaller screen, but if y'all can't see what I'm talking about, that's part of the problem.
We got liftoff.
Again, that passed as real 2 years ago. If you watch this video and you think it's real, I feel bad for you.
3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
So bad. That is so crazy. This is
3,
obviously fake
2,
too. At the
1,
beginning,
ignition.
the whole thing is fake.
We have liftoff.
If you look at this video and tell me
3,
it's not doctored, one frame from start to finish, other than the jump cuts.
3, 3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
That right there. But I can understand if you don't see it. Makes perfect sense. But anyway, let me go back to this though. I gotta show one more time. Tell me if you think this is real.
3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff. 3, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
Look at that. That's crazy. Look at that. So bad. Wow. CGI looks old after 2 years. You can start seeing the issues. But 2 years ago when I watched it, it looked pretty solid. More convincing than that. But like I said, it's been 2 years, so CGI and the awareness of what good CGI looks like changes over time. Just like if you watch an old movie, you'll be like, how did this scare anybody? It doesn't look scary at all. Or the costume, I can tell he's wearing a costume, but because you're aware of it, more aware of it. Let me get that. Your perspective is your reality. The more aware you are, the brighter your horizon is. The more reality reveals itself in a sense. Come on, bro. Why you guarding me like that? Oh, I fucked that up. That was on me. But yeah, that's just one video. Maybe watch some more today. I don't know. I'm chilling. Trying to play some rec, but I don't know if anybody on right now. Oh, so that shit, I forget that shit don't work. Damn. Oh, I did that right in front of that other guy. That's fucked up. I lost all my shit. Give me that. Hey. A head and shoulder fake. With the reverse pivot. Just joking. All right, let's see what this talking about real quick.
I want to ask you this too. Money Man said that he was offered $40 million for his catalog. A lot of people said he's capped.
Yeah, I think he lying. Cause this is what I noticed. Katy Perry just sold her for 200 and something million.
225.
I noticed all the white people, all of them get in the hundreds. All the black people be in the 20s. Future 20.
Well, Future was 70, and that was just the publishing, I think.
Tina Turner was like what, 90 or 80?
Yeah.
Hi, come on now. But the white people in the hundreds.
Yeah.
So, they had to kill Mike for here. Mike wouldn't sell here.
Yeah, Tina Turner was 50 million.
Mike bought the Beatles. And they were trying to convince us Michael Jackson was broke. He bought the Beatles. Come on, my nigga.
Yeah, he owned a part of Sony too.
Come on, my nigga. Mike bought the Beatles catalog. Why do you niggas selling nails?
You notice all the country singers get like 300, 400 million.
Come on, homie. You know why? You know why?
Why?
Because they keep their music in the chitlin circuit. And the chitlin circuit gets them to the Country Music Awards.
Yeah.
They stay in the chitlin circuit. Ding, 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 ding. Get it? They keep it amongst the white country redneck people. They don't go to no big venue. They play in the smallest club, honky tonks. And then all of a sudden they're on Country Music Award, Country Music Television. They don't come to BET. They don't go to VH1. They don't go to MTV. Country music, they stay there. Come on, niggas. Nigga television. Right, another Negro League. The Chitlin Circuit. Let's brand it. Get it? They did.
Why you think Money Man capping though?
Cause rappers cap. That's our part, nigga. Cause niggas cap, nigga. We some of
he's-
those street niggas cap. Rappers cap.
He's independent though.
Independent rappers cap.
Independent rappers cap.
But they keep most of you get a bigger percentage when you're independent.
They capping.
And he has a few hits too. And he has 1.7 billion streams independently. He's with Empire, but with Empire you get a bigger cut. You own your masters.
He capping.
So 40 million. Okay, so what you think he's worth?
I say 20. You can't make me believe Money Man got no 20-year down the road hits. Like Michael Jackson them. Like, you can't make me believe that. You can't make me believe that the people been in the industry looking at this guy who's been in this world, in this music world for 10 years. He don't have no radio hits like Future.
Hell no.
He don't have no radio hits like Future. He a chitlin circuit man. This a chitlin circuit nigga. Y'all want me to believe this chitlin said they out in front. He don't have no major radio hits that we can all recite when they come on. I just had to ask that man, who was that? I had to boss up for a chick. I just told a nigga. I didn't know that was Money Man.
Yeah, like I said, he got a few records though. Money Man got a few
this
records.
What I'm saying. We don't know that. When they but his fans know him. But if they play his song, I don't know, the real nigga. I didn't know that was him. 20 years from now, his music won't play like that.
Right.
They capping, my nigga.
Why you think everybody's selling their catalog though? Something's going on.
Cause they capping. They ain't made the money they said they been making. They don't own what they say they own. Nigga, why would I sell my name, my catalog? Well, nigga, this is how my family go eat. They could sell it. This is my life insurance policy. This for the people. If I cash in now, when I get this 40 million, they gonna hit me with taxes.
Right.
And I'm finna start living off of it. So I'm starting to say, homie, they capping to us. Man, you don't hear Garth Brooks and them selling theirs.
Right.
You don't hear Stevie Wonder talk about selling his. Michael Jackson never sold his. And they was telling us he was broke. Sam Cooke didn't sell his. Their families were able to go back and get the money that they was cheated out of long after they were dead. Man, come on, homie. But we're a generation, we're the right now generation, my nigga. We want it right now.
Instant gratification.
And at times I tell myself, yeah, give it to me right now, man. But man, what about my family, my kids? The people that when I'm gone, I done fucked off everything, and all they got is a big name. You said to a family member. And y'all living down here with us. Say, man, that says something, them son over there, and they right amongst regular people. I don't want to do that, homie. I'll wake up and go to bed at night, hoping that I can live long enough to put everybody around me in position. In the right position, homie.
There you have it, Charleston White, yet again, with the shit. Always something poignant to say, if you will.
A stunning, beautiful. So you're Anna Wyants, a stunning, beautiful 28-year-old female painter, and you're dating this 78-year-old man. At first glance, you're probably thinking that, oh, he's just her sugar daddy, she's probably just trying to gold dig him, or oh, maybe she has daddy issues. And you would be somewhat correct, but it goes much deeper than that. See, you as Anna Wyatt are very smart, and this old dude that you picked up is no regular old dude. No, this old dude is Larry Gagosian. And Larry Gagosian is one of the most powerful men in all of the fine art world. He owns Gagosian Galleries, with 19 different galleries around the world that sells around $1 billion worth of art every year, making him the richest art dealer in history with a reported net worth of around $600 million. So Larry Gagosian doesn't just control the art market, he practically is the art markets.
By all accounts, it's a healthy market.
Which means if you're a starving artist with a lot of potential, you've got your own unique style, but you just can't seem to get the rest of the art world to see your genius, and you also happen to be a female and beautiful, then Larry Gagosian is the guy you gotta get in bed with. And that's exactly what you as Anna Wyatt did. You banged the old dude you won his heart, and boom! Your paintings that used to go for $400 each are now being sold for $1.6 million.
Damn.
A 4,000 times increase. And this is not a knock on Anna, by the way. Most of us would probably do the same thing if we were in her shoes. But how? How can one man take a nobody artist and blast her into stardom so quickly? Well, because the art world is dominated by just a few rich people. And at the top of them all is Larry Gagosian. And Anna Wyatt knows just how to court him. Stay dangerous, subscribe for more, and this is how the fine art market really works. Men like Larry have controlled the art world for generations because they've been the only ones that have enough money to actually buy famous arts. And they're also the only ones with the knowledge and connections to know which art to buy. But for the first time ever, things are changing, and now finally anyone can have access to the art market thanks to Masterworks.
Oh yeah, they love this new way to make money apparently.
And a court judge, you were never exposed to art or art history when you were a kid. And the only so it's easy to see why the offerings on Masterworks have sold out within minutes. But if you click the link below, you still have the chance to skip the waitlist and start your collection today. Click the link below to skip the waitlist now. Thanks to Masterworks for sponsoring this video. Despite your raw talent, you as Anna Wyatt weren't raised to be a famous artist. Born in Calgary, Canada to a lawyer and a court judge, you were never exposed to art or art history when you were a kid. And the only paintings you ever came across were the ones your grandpa bought from a flea market. And you never really picked up a paintbrush in your youth at all. Nobody would have guessed that when you grew up, your paintings would be worth millions of dollars. It wasn't until college at the Rhode Island School of Design that you really tried your hand at arts. You began painting as a way to digest, as a way to understand your childhood and teenage years, like a form of therapy. But almost immediately, it was clear that you had much more than just a gift for painting. You were a straight-up prodigy. By the end of your first semester, all your focus turned to painting. You submitted your work to an art competition put on by the National Gallery of Canada and immediately placed in the top 3. By 2017, you graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts before going all the way to China to attend a prestigious art school to hone in your skills. With a rock-solid art education behind you, you moved to New York City, ready to get your painting career off the ground. You spent your days working as a studio assistant for a prominent painter named Cynthia Talmadge. And all your nights were dedicated to painting in your Upper West Side apartments. Cynthia was so impressed by your work that one day, she decided to give you a shout out on Instagram. And that single post took you from being practically unknown to having actual fans and getting a lot of attention. You were taking the first steps towards becoming a successful painter, but you still had a long way to go. By 2019, you were lucky enough to have your first New York Gallery solo exhibition. And what's even crazier is that every single piece sold. The highest earning painting brought in $12,000, but even the cheapest one sold for $2,000. This was very impressive for a new artist, as most artists barely make a dime. Less than a year later, you got a feature in New American Painters, and not long after that, you received your golden ticket, representation. You signed with a gallery called Blum & Poe in Los Angeles, and just like that, the value of your paintings shot up. Now they're being sold at $50,000 each. That's a little less than the average yearly salary in America for just one painting. You were officially in the big leagues. Only a small percentage of artists make it to this point, and yet for you, it was just the beginning.
Damn.
Shortly after partnering with Blum & Poe Galleries, things started to go sour. A rumor was going around that your art dealer Tim Blum was going behind your back. He was supposed to be the guy to make sure your paintings were sold for as much money as possible, but instead he was allowing gallery employees to buy your pieces in advance. They kept drawer work for themselves and told collectors that all your pieces had already been sold out. So who knows how much money they had cost you? You couldn't trust Tim anymore and you needed a way out. And that's when you cross paths with the legendary Larry Gagosian. Larry spotted your work after your very first solo exhibition and was taken aback with your style. He immediately bought your piece head and hung it in his home. But it wasn't until 2021, after your falling out with Blum and Poe, that you came across Larry again at one of your shows. You were this beautiful, talented young artist, and he was one of your biggest admirers. It sounded like something out of a 90s rom-com. And just like that, you and Larry started dating. Soon he was taking you on luxury vacations to Saint-Tropez and Paris, and he immediately started working his magic to up your value in the art world.
Working his
In a
magic.
blink of an eye, you dropped Blum as your art dealer and signed with Gagosian Galleries, and your art career started soaring faster than you could have ever imagined. All of a sudden, your paintings were worth millions. Everyone wanted to work with you. News outlets were plastered with your pictures, calling you the Millennial Botticelli. Your piece Summertime that sold for $12,000 just 2 years ago was now being resold at $1.5 million. That's right, the exact same painting sold for 125 times more. Larry helped you blow up to millionaire status and made you a household name in the art world in less than a year. He gave you what millions of other artists could only dream of. But how? How did Larry Gagosian do it? What was his secret? Just like you, Larry Gagosian wasn't born into money or the world of luxury arts. In fact, he insists that it was a complete fluke that he got into the art business at all. Larry was the only son of an Armenian family in Los Angeles. His mom was an actor and singer, while his dad was an accountant. He had a happy upper middle class life, and after earning his bachelor's degree in literature, not arts, he started working random little jobs to pay the bills. He worked at a talent agency before he was fired, then he took a job parking cars as a valet. Larry had no idea what to do with his life until one day he saw a guy in the street selling posters, and the guy was making a decent amount of money from it. And it sparked an idea for Larry, an idea that would go on to make him a multi-millionaire. He thought, why can't I do that too? So he did. Almost immediately, he realized he had a knack for selling posters. They were going so fast that he couldn't keep them in stock. So he started framing them and charging upwards of $100 a piece. Now he was really making money. Larry made so much money off of posters that he quickly earned enough to buy a whole frame shop of his own. And it wasn't long before he opened another storefront selling art prints. These pieces were way fancier than the posters he was peddling before, and it slowly transitioned him from being a street vendor into an art dealer. But Larry knew the only way to make a splash in the art industry was to go through the artists themselves. So he took it upon himself to cold call a photographer named Ralph Gibson, whose work he had seen in an art magazine, offering him the chance to do a show at a spot in LA, and the guy actually said yes. This one phone call would forever change Larry's life. All of a sudden, he was becoming friends with important people in the art world. He was buying artwork and putting on shows for all sorts of artists on the rise. Soon, Larry had become so successful in the art world that he outgrew LA and moved to New York, where he started buying more and more expensive paintings. Larry might not have been an art guy at first, but he was now. And combine that with being an insanely talented salesman and business person, and it propelled Larry to become the richest art dealer the world has ever seen. It put him in a position where Larry can take a nobody artist and display their art next to other million-dollar pieces in his galleries. He can connect them with all the right magazines. He can get their art into auctions. Larry can even bid on their art to drive up the price. And that's probably exactly what he did with his lover Anna. But it might not be all sunshines and rainbows for Anna moving forward. You see, artificially popping up a new artist like Anna Wyant can sometimes lead to a quick burnout. As one art critic put it, the art world loves to devour its young. And from now on, there's going to be a lot of pressure on Anna to keep pumping out million-dollar art pieces. If Larry Gagosian backs you, you have to live up to his expectations, which can be a lot. Right now, Anna Wyant is living every artist's dream. But all her success could disappear just as quickly. After all, if one man has the power to give you all the money and fame, he also has the power to take it all away. That is just the nature of the business. Success is often fleeting. A lot of people will shame Anna for playing dirty like this, but the world is a dirty place, and most of her haters would do the exact same thing in her position.
Stay dangerous. That's funny. They say it's nice to have a sugar daddy. That's what that video was about.
Make that every time, Jason.
Damn. 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 Fouled his ass. And just listen to this shit.
Saving or thrift. Many very penurious people are poor, while free spenders often get rich. Nor is getting rich due to doing things which others fail to do. For two men in the same business often do almost exactly the same things, and one gets rich while the other remains poor or becomes a bankrupt. From all these things, we must come to the conclusion that getting rich is the result of doing things in a certain way. If getting rich is the result of doing things in a certain way, and if like causes always produce like effects, then any man or woman who can do things in that way can become rich, and the whole matter is brought within the domain of exact science. The question arises here, whether this certain way may not be so difficult that only a few may follow it. This cannot be true, as we have seen, so far as natural ability is concerned. Talented people get rich, and blockheads get rich. Intellectually brilliant people get rich, and very stupid people get rich. Physically strong people get rich, and weak and sickly people get rich. Some degree of ability to think and understand is of course essential, but insofar as natural ability is concerned, any man or woman who has sense enough to read and understand these words can certainly get rich. Also, we have seen that it is not a matter of environment. Location counts for something. One would not go to the heart of the Sahara and expect to do successful business. Getting rich involves the necessity of dealing with men and of being where there are people to deal with. And if these people are inclined to deal in the way you want to deal, so much the better. But that is about as far as environment goes. If anybody else in your town can get rich, so can you. And if anybody else in your state can get rich, so can you. Again, it is not a matter of choosing some particular business or profession. People get rich in every business and in every profession, while their next-door neighbors in the same vocation remain in poverty. It is true that you will do best in a business which you like, and which is congenial to you. And if you have certain talents which are well developed, you will do best in a business which calls for the exercise of those talents. Also, you will do best in a business which is suited to your locality. An ice cream parlor would do better in a warm climate than in Greenland, and a salmon fishery will succeed better in the Northwest than in Florida, where there are no salmon. But, aside from these general limitations, getting rich is not dependent upon your engaging in some particular business, but upon your learning to do things in a certain way. If you are now in business, and anybody else in your locality is getting rich in the same business, while you are not getting rich, it is because you are not doing things in the same way that the other person is doing them. No one is prevented from getting rich by lack of capital. True, as you get capital, the increase becomes more easy and rapid, but one who has capital is already rich and does not need to consider how to become so. No matter how poor you may be, if you begin to do things in the certain way, you will begin to get rich, and you will begin to have capital. The getting of capital is a part of the process of getting rich, and it is a part of the result which invariably follows the doing of things in the certain way. You may be the poorest man on the continent and be deeply in debt. You may have neither friends, influence, nor resources. But if you begin to do things in this way, you must infallibly begin to get rich, for like causes must produce like effects. If you have no capital, you can get capital. If you are in the wrong business, you can get into the right business. If you are in the wrong location, you can go to the right location. And you can do so by beginning in your present business and in your present location to do things in the certain way which causes success. Chapter 3. Is opportunity monopolized? No man is kept poor because opportunity has been taken away from him, because other people have monopolized the wealth and have put a fence around it. You may be shut off from engaging in business in certain lines, but there are other channels open to you. Probably it would be hard for you to get control of any of the great railroad systems. That field is pretty well monopolized. But the electric railway business is still in its infancy and offers plenty of scope for enterprise. And it will be but a very few years until traffic and transportation through the air will become a great industry, and in all its branches will give employment to hundreds of thousands and perhaps to millions of people. Why not turn your attention to the development of aerial transportation instead of competing with J.J. Hill and others for a chance in the steam railway world? It is quite true that if you are a workman in the employ of the Steel Trust, you have very little chance of becoming the owner of the plant in which you work. But it is also true that if you will commence to act in a certain way, you can soon leave the employ of the Steel Trust. You can buy a farm of from 10 to 40 acres and engage in business as a producer of foodstuffs. There is great opportunity at this time for men who will live upon small tracts of land and cultivate the same intensively. Such men will certainly get rich. You may say that it is impossible for you to get the land, but I'm going to prove to you that it is not impossible, and that you can certainly get a farm if you will go to work in a certain way. At different periods, the tide of opportunity sets in different directions, according to the needs of the whole, and the particular stage of social evolution which has been reached. At present, in America, it is setting toward agriculture and the allied industries and professions. Today, opportunity is open before the farmer in his line more than before the factory worker in his line. It is open before the businessman who supplies the farmer more than before the one who supplies the factory worker, and before the professional man who waits upon the farmer more than before the one who serves the working class. There is abundance of opportunity for the man who will go with the tide, instead of trying to swim against it. So the factory workers, either as individuals or as a class, are not deprived of opportunity. The workers are not being kept down by their masters. They are not being ground by the trusts and combinations of capital. As a class, they are where they are because they do not do things in a certain way. If the workers of America chose to do so, they could follow the example of their brothers in Belgium and other countries and establish great department stores and cooperative industries. They could elect men of their own class to office and pass laws favoring the development of such cooperative industries. And in a few years, they could take peaceable possession of the industrial field. The working class may become the master class whenever they will begin to do things in a certain way. The law of wealth is the same for them as it is for all others. This they must learn, and they will remain where they are as long as they continue to do as they do. The individual worker, however, is not held down by the ignorance or the mental slothfulness of his class. He can follow the tide of opportunity to riches, and this book will tell him how. No one is kept in poverty by a shortness in the supply of riches. There is more than enough for all. A palace as large as the Capitol at Washington might be built for every family on Earth from the building material in the United States alone. And under intensive cultivation, this country would produce wool, cotton, linen, and silk, enough to clothe each person in the world, finer than Solomon was arrayed in all his glory, together with food enough to feed them all luxuriously. The visible supply is practically inexhaustible. And the invisible supply really is inexhaustible. Everything you see on earth is made from one original substance, out of which all things proceed. New forms are constantly being made, and older ones are dissolving, but all are shapes assumed by one thing. There is no limit to the supply of formless stuff or original substance. The universe is made out of it, but it was not all used in making the universe. The spaces in, through, and between the forms of the visible universe are permeated and filled with the original substance, with the formless stuff. with the raw material of all things. 10,000 times as much as has been made might still be made, and even then we should not have exhausted the supply of universal raw material. No man, therefore, is poor because nature is poor, or because there is not enough to go around. Nature is an inexhaustible storehouse of riches. The supply will never run short. Original substance is alive with creative energy and is constantly producing more forms. When the supply of building material is exhausted, more will be produced. When the soil is exhausted, so that foodstuffs and materials for clothing will no longer grow upon it, it will be renewed, or more soil will be made. When all the gold and silver has been dug from the earth, if man is still in such a stage of social development that he needs gold and silver, more will be produced from the formless. The formless stuff responds to the needs of man. It will not let him be without any good thing. This is true of man collectively. The race as a whole is always abundantly rich, and if individuals are poor, it is because they do not follow the certain way of doing things which makes the individual man rich. The formless stuff is intelligent. It is stuff which thinks. It is alive and is always impelled toward more life. It is the natural and inherent impulse of life to seek to live more. It is the nature of intelligence to enlarge itself, and of consciousness to seek to extend its boundaries and find fuller expression. The universe of forms has been made by formless living substance, throwing itself into form in order to express itself more fully. The universe is a great living presence, always moving inherently toward more life and fuller functioning. Nature is formed for the advancement of life. Its impelling motive is the increase of life. For this cause, everything which can possibly minister to life is bountifully provided. There can be no lack, unless God is to contradict himself and nullify his own works. You are not kept poor by lack in the supply of riches. It is a fact which I shall demonstrate a little farther on, that even the resources of the formless supply are at the command of the man or woman who will act and think in a certain way. Chapter 4. The first principle in the science of getting rich. Thought is the only power which can produce tangible riches from the formless substance. The stuff from which all things are made is a substance which thinks, and a thought of form in this substance produces the form. Original substance moves according to its thoughts. Every form and process you see in nature is the visible expression of a thought in original substance. As the formless stuff thinks of a form, it takes that form. As it thinks of a motion, it makes that motion. That is the way all things were created. We live in a thought world, which is part of a thought universe. The thought of a moving universe extended throughout formless substance, and the thinking stuff moving according to that thought took the form of systems of planets and maintains that form. Thinking substance takes the form of its thought and moves according to the thought. Holding the idea of a circling system of suns and worlds, it takes the form of these bodies and moves them as it thinks. Thinking the form of a slow-growing oak tree, it moves accordingly and produces the tree, though centuries may be required to do the work. In creating, the formless seems to move according to the lines of motion it has established. The thought of an oak tree does not cause the instant formation of a full-grown tree, but it does start in motion the forces which will produce the tree along established lines of growth. Every thought of form held in thinking substance causes the creation of the form, but always, or at least generally, along lines of growth and action already established. The thought of a house of a certain construction, if it were impressed upon formless substance, might not cause the instant formation of the house, but it would cause the turning of creative energies already working in trade and commerce into such channels as to result in the speedy building of the house. And if there were no existing channels through which the creative energy could work, then the house would be formed directly from primal substance, without waiting for the slow processes of the organic and inorganic world. No thought of form can be impressed upon original substance without causing the creation of the form. Man is a thinking center and can originate thought. All the forms that man fashions with his hands must first exist in his thought. He cannot shape a thing until he has thought that thing. And so far, man has confined his efforts wholly to the work of his hands. He has applied manual labor to the world of forms, seeking to change or modify those already existing. He has never thought of trying to cause the creation of new forms by impressing his thoughts upon formless substance. When man has a thought form, he takes material from the forms of nature and makes an image of the form which is in his mind. He has so far made little or no effort to cooperate with formless intelligence, to work with the Father. He has not dreamed that he can do what he seeth the Father doing. Man reshapes and modifies existing forms by manual labor. He has given no attention to the question whether he may not produce things from formless substance by communicating his thoughts to it. We propose to prove that he may do so, to prove that any man or woman may do so, and to show how. As our first step, we must lay down 3 fundamental propositions. First, we assert that there is one original formless stuff, or substance, from which all things are made. All the seemingly many elements are but different presentations of one element. All the many forms found in organic and inorganic nature are but different shapes, made from the same stuff. And this stuff is thinking stuff. A thought held in it produces the form of the thought. Thought, in thinking substance, produces shapes. Man is a thinking center, capable of original thought. If man can communicate his thought to original thinking substance, he can cause the creation or formation of the thing he thinks about. To summarize this, there is a thinking stuff from which all things are made, and which, in its original state, permeates, penetrates, and fills the interspaces of the universe. A thought, in this substance, produces the thing that is imaged by the thought. Man can form things in his thought, and, by impressing his thought upon formless substance, can cause the thing he thinks about to be created. It may be asked if I can prove these statements, and without going into details, I answer that I can do so, both by logic and experience. Reasoning back from the phenomena of form and thought, I come to one original thinking substance. And reasoning forward from this thinking substance, I come to man's power to cause the formation of the thing he thinks about. And by experiment, I find the reasoning true. And this is my strongest proof. If one man who reads this book gets rich by doing what it tells him to do, that is evidence in support of my claim.
All of these inconveniences and setbacks come as the result of the individual being unable to concentrate his faculties upon the things he is doing. Fatigue or scatteredness deprive him of the necessary coordination. We know what are called accident-prone people. They can find an accident anywhere. They seem to be born to fall, stub their toes, bang their fingers, and things of that nature. There seems to be no reason why this occurs. It is simply due to interior lack of coordination. Also, thoughtlessness often causes the person to expose himself unnecessarily to hazards. He climbs too high on an insecure ladder. He engages in some do-it-yourself project that is a little beyond his capacity. This type of situation should cause us to look within, to see if we can find out why these kind of things happen. Why our life can be a continuous sequence of irritations, while another person seemingly has a much easier time. Most of our troubles arise from pushing. The individual has some kind of drive behind him. Now, drive can be initiative, but it can also be psychic irritation. Certain disturbances affecting the body will cause the pulse to become more rapid. And this increasing rapidity is not an indication that the heart is a healthier heart, but rather that it may be a toxic heart, that it may be under irritation, which stimulates function, but does not result in any actual improvement in the circulation system. In fact, this stimulation may ultimately destroy the health of the heart. On another level, the individual makes use of stimulants to increase drive. He may depend upon his cup of coffee as an eye-opener in the morning. He may depend upon his cocktail in the afternoon to keep going. In both of these cases, he is not actually adding anything to the substance of his strength or energy. He is simply whipping himself. And like the old horse that was whipped, he will ultimately fall under this strain, which is not being supported by any increasing strength or any increasing vitality in himself. We also notice, with some apprehension, the life expectancies of various occupations. And one of the most interesting of these expectancy patterns deals with the athlete. We would assume that a man who is in athletics and spends most of his life keeping his body in trim should have a long life expectancy. But if his form of athletics is too strenuous or too hazardous, we find the reverse. And many a person who has devoted most of his life to physical culture is dead at 50.
Damn.
The reason here is that he has overtaxed his resources, that he has put too great a strain upon his structure, and the structure has ultimately broken down. Moderate exercise would have given him a long life. Inordinate exercise has shortened his life. We then realize the importance of the Socratic axiom of moderation. All things being equal, moderation not only extends life, but moderation in action extends efficiency. The individual who is moderate in his ways, both in his ambitions and in his actions, such an individual has the greatest probabilities of a successful and adjusted life. Immoderation for any reason or for any motive is usually the cause of disaster. Now, many persons would feel that if they are immoderate in a good cause, this should constitute immunity from ill results. Unfortunately, nature does not recognize causes of this nature. The individual who sacrifices himself to some noble purpose may achieve a great good, but if he violates any of the laws of his own integration, he will suffer personally for the violation that he has caused. Therefore, all stress or strain, regardless of motive, should be subject to careful thought. The individual must expect to pay his natural debts, regardless of the reason why he incurred these debts. All of this has a bearing on our principal theme, which is ego pressure. The person moving pressurefully from within himself tears his way through his own body and attempts to tear his way through his world. The very pressures which he exerts will result inevitably in resistances. And these resistances require greater expenditures of energy to break through them. Very often we are not successful in breaking through. Then we have a grand frustration over the whole matter. But even if we do break through, it is with a tremendous expenditure of vitality. Vitality in man is not an inexhaustible fountain. The life of the person seems to have a general energy allotment. We can spend a little more or a little less, but we cannot break through the general pattern of our own available vitality. This vitality differs with different persons. Some have more abundant energies than others, but each must study his own energy equivalents and quotients and try to live within his vital means, even as he tries to live within his economic means. Extravagance of energy is as dismal as extravagance of funds, and the person who is extravagant frequently finds himself in a serious predicament. If, therefore, we wish to chart a life, plan a life, wish to make certain achievements within the broad pattern of living, perhaps the first thing we should study is our energy allotment. We should begin to analyze the degree of available vitality that we possess. This is a little more complicated than first appears, because some individuals have more vitality than they suspect and are simply lazy. Others do not have as much vitality as
Some
they
people just
believe,
lazy.
and consequently exhaust themselves before their time. To determine approximately what we can do, how long and how often we can use certain qualities of energy, what our probabilities are of recuperation from exhaustion, the degree of stress and strain by means of which our attitudes are exhausting or depleting our energy reserves. These things we must study. The first and most obvious cause of energy depletion, of course, is activity, labor, work, profession. These natural, vocational, and avocational uses of energy, however, do not, for the most part, represent an exhausting factor. The individual today is not as exhausted by his work as he is by his attitudes. There was a time when the average person was unable to conserve enough energy from the labor of existing to provide himself with a cultural life of importance. Today, this is largely untrue. The average person can develop a reasonably strong personal culture if he so desires. It is absence of desire that leaves man today without the incentives or without the available means of attaining culture. Now, by culture, we do not simply mean a certain intellectualism. By culture, I mean a mature, personal, internal life. A life that is rich with growing and knowing. A life that is interiorly gracious, poised, calm, and sufficient. And an inner life in which faith is stronger than fear in all of the critical situations that arise. The attainment of such interior integration is possible to modern man. And even though we live in hectic times and under tremendous expenditures of money and time, we have never before had the opportunity for as great a cultural existence as now. Unfortunately, however, we have developed a series of culture escapes. We have settled down to an ingenious method of wasting time. We have become so imbued with certain fallacies of our day that we are not directing our available energies to any essentially important end. The reason here is not fatigue, but psychic lack of orientation. With half of our population neurotic, it is evident that we will not ordinarily make good use of opportunity. A neurotic person is already in a situation in which he is resistant to self-improvement. The neurotic person is like an individual with a minor pain. The only problem that concerns him is to get rid of the pain. In this case, get rid as far as he can, or submerge as much as possible, the particular problems around which his neurosis centers. So today, man with more leisure than he ever possessed before is perfectly content to spend most of that leisure time looking into a television set. He considers this as his culture life. And as we examine the programs more carefully, we realize that the cultural content is not as high as it might be. There are moments in which we may doubt that it is satisfying to the interior life of the individual. It is not a means of enrichment. It is simply a rather foolish way of trying to forget something. The person who lives only to forget will generally have a rather poor life, because actually he is giving his problem far too much importance in his own nature. If it is important enough to forget, it is difficult to forget. If he must keep his mind on escaping it continuously, the problem grows greater than the escape, and we pass from one excessive attitude to another. To meet this type of situation, we have to study what we are, what we can do, what we want to do. And among our people at the present time, if we sit down with the average family and we simply say to these people, if you could do exactly what you want to do, what would you like to do with your life? This usually stops the person in his tracks. It takes him quite a while to try to figure this out. And very often, by the time he figures it out, his own solution is unreal or untrue. Because near the end of his figuring, a certain sense of respectability comes in on him, and he manufactures some noble purpose which he had no intention of actually achieving. It sounds nice to say that he would love to give his life to the service of others. But this is not really his conclusion. It is his defense against the fact that he has no actual dedication to anything. So without any real source of organization, without a goal which he is working for tomorrow and next week and next year, it is natural and inevitable that he would not have strong enough allegiances to anything to bind him and to tie him. It is also noticeable how allegiance to proper causes lengthens life and improves health. The person who has something he must do will live to do it. And the individual who has nothing important to do has probably already experienced within himself that he is dead. Therefore, he might as well lie down and make it complete. The person with real objectives also has the tendency to plan. A person who really wants to achieve something that is important and useful has already discovered that you cannot simply bluster your way to attainment. You have to plan, you have to build, you have to sacrifice a certain amount in order to attain the purpose which is dominant in your life. You then build your life around a purpose, and that which is not essential to the purpose, you find it comparatively easy to relinquish. If, however, you have no purpose, you have a tendency to hold on to everything because it might be useful sometime. This becomes the base of gadgeteering, of endless accumulating. The person who does not know what he is going to want or need either throws away too much or too little, and again involves and complicates his life. Realizing these situations to be the common practice of our time, we realize also that today there cuts through this general inertia powerful streaks of ambition. We are an ambitious people. Why, no one knows. And what we seek to attain is often so abstract that we cannot define it to ourselves. Our principal ambition, seemingly, is to get ahead. We want to go somewhere.
Right.
But in order to get ahead today, it is necessary for us first to get ahead in ourselves. We have got to organize our own resources. Consequently, those purposes which are most obvious, even though not most important, receive the larger amount of support. The man can see every reason why promotion in his business is important to him. Once he has a store, he is possessed by the inclination to have a branch office. By the time he has a couple of branch offices, he is under the utter compulsion to create a chain system. And so it goes. Moved by these compulsions, he tries to build a life around a small area of visible, physical, or obvious attitudes and actions. This, in turn, does cut in upon his leisure, increases his worries, triples or many times multiplies his responsibilities, and gradually undermines his energy resources. The more he has in the form of unnecessary possessions, the more energy he must expend on them, and therefore the less he has, either for his own living or even for his own survival. And life today, although science has given us many protections, is hazardous to the person or for the person who has strong ambitions. He will usually have a shortened life as the result. Ambition in itself has always been subject to a great deal of philosophizing. Ambition is a drive which we all possess to some degree. The individual apparently lacking in ambition is marked as one least likely to succeed in anything. There are some persons in whom the ambition elements are comparatively negligible. These persons have no desire to transcend their present station in life or necessarily to improve themselves further than is necessary for comfort. This type of person does not have any very great psychological pressures. If he had pressures, he would become dissatisfied. Lack of pressure may cause lack of dissatisfaction. The person simply does not have the initiative to want more or to believe that he can achieve more. He has certain comforts and securities as a result. but he is likely to vegetate. He is not likely to make any very powerful contribution to himself or anyone else. Assuming that his life is intended primarily for growth, he is not growing very rapidly. The other end of this pattern, the other extreme, is the person who is simply a bundle of ambitions. Everything he does, everything he thinks, is keyed to some advancement of himself. He may become ruthless and struggle on, impoverishing or destroying or injuring those around him. With nothing on his mind but his own success, he is a danger to all concerned. And at this moment, this tendency is overstrong among Western people and is certainly endangering the security of civilization. The individual living only to use civilization for his own advancement cannot safely lead a people, nor can he preserve the peace and integrity of collective life and relationships. Now we know that in our daily living, in our personal way of life, there is a certain struggle continuously going on. We want to have a certain sense of growth. At the same time, we do not want to come under the illusion and delusion of psychic pressure. We want to achieve moderately. We want to have what is necessary for our respectability and our security. We would like to get somewhere in the larger meaning of that thought. And yet, the moment we permit ambition to take over, it becomes habit forming. And once we have come under its influence, we can seldom again escape from it. It is like a powerful narcotic. It kills out something in us, even as it satisfies something else. Also, ambition, as it becomes more pleasurable, takes all of our energy allotment. It gives us so much one-pointedness that we become blind to too many important values. Ambition in the home has broken thousands, millions of homes. Ambition in the family has resulted in misery for the children. And this pattern has been passed on as a heritage from one generation to another. So to attempt a balance between what we might term a kind of mystical abstraction and this fiendish intensity of ambition which we know today, to find balance here, we have to do some work of our own. It cannot all be done for us. We have to make some decisions, and we have to have the courage to live them after we have made them. If we fail to plan a life, the life will get out of control. There is no way to prevent it. Pressures of circumstances, insistences of conditions around us will injure us unless we are stronger than these pressures. Ambition gives us a certain available will energy. The will to be, the will to have, the will to power. These are all aspects of a fundamental pressure, which is the will to live itself. Without the will to live, things would crumble, fall apart, and wither of themselves. We exist only because we continually direct a certain kind of energy from the inner nature of our being outward into the body. Every time we raise our hand, every time we speak a word, every time we think a thought, we accomplish these function processes by willing to do so. This willing has become so automatic that we no longer consciously recognize it. Well, all we know is that if we overdo any of these things, we become tired. And because of this, we have a general lowering of vitality. One answer, of course, is that you cannot keep energy moving continuously in one direction. The individual wills to achieve because of effort, and effort cannot be continuous. The moment, therefore, that effort is relaxed, the will factor diminishes. Also, if the effort is exhausted, the will factor is no longer supported and may fail or fade out even more rapidly. To maintain a certain attitude continuously means, therefore, continuous willing to do this. And this willing in a continuous chain of patterning is probably the greatest cause of exhaustion which man is capable. On the other hand, is this tremendous willing the secret of true power? We have long thought that it was. We have long believed in the power of force over persuasion. But as we go along living from day to day, it comes to our realization that this will, as an inevitable driving force, its very irresistibility, so-called, creates obstacles. And the immovable object comes into our life merely because of our own drive. If we drive far enough and hard enough in any direction, we will hit a solid wall. Sometimes this wall is very near to us. Sometimes it is quite remote. But if we do as we please long enough, someone is going to object. Something is going to fight back. And the very things that we do may turn upon us, because the will to do them does not necessarily convey the fact that they are right or that they should be done. If, therefore, we will to do that which is not right or proper for us, the reaction comes almost immediately. But we may say that this pressure of will, this determination to get ahead, this willingness to fight every step of the way for success, this internal subjective belief, this archetypal concept that we must fight to get there, makes the fight important. And while we think in these terms and try to live according to them, we are paying for our folly with our life and our energy and our consciousness. Let us assume, therefore, that we are not so different from the pupil taking music lessons. In singing, the great trick of a great voice is not to bellow. The idea that you can reach the back row of the great auditorium by bellowing is a mistake. All you will get by bellowing is apoplexy. And if you bellow enough, you will empty the house. Because no one wants to listen to such roaring. And a great many persons, I've heard them, when they pick up a telephone to talk to someone, apparently come under the illusion that they actually have to talk loud enough to be heard in the neighborhood where they are calling to. Instead of speaking moderately into the phone, they shout, apparently under the delusion that as their neighbor lives 20 miles away, they must talk loud enough for him to hear them without a phone. This is nervousness, this is tension. But it makes a telephone conversation entirely objectionable and often results in the fact that the words are not legible or not audible correctly because of the tremendous amount of energy. Consequently, we learn in singing that two things constitute the carrying power of a voice. The first of these is the proper use of breath, which in this case is energy. If you get your lips, your mouth, and your front teeth out of the way of your breath, it will go much further than it will with bellowing. If you get yourself out of your way in the things you do, much the same will occur. The second important thing in transmission is diction. That the words be spoken sufficiently clearly so that they can be heard and understood. Most persons want to be understood vocally and audibly while their jaws are locked. This means that they've got every bit of energy they can possibly expend tied up in the jaw area. Well, if the jaws are locked, the voice cannot express properly. So in the development of music, a comparatively small, frail person may fill a complete auditorium because they know how to use voice. It is even more or less a musical tradition that in a chorus or in an opera, the basso profundo, who must really carry the great heavy tones, is usually about 5 feet 2 inches high and weighs about 100 pounds. Whereas the tenor, who is supposed to have a light, high voice, is apt to be a fine example of Teutonism, probably weighing 250 pounds. But the smaller person, by the use of voice, can accomplish just as much. So in the use of voice, we have again this example of energy. Energy wisely directed without effort. If the person tries too hard, he will have a very dry throat. If he is nervous, he will have a dry throat. And little by little, his own limitations will change him from a singer into a bellower, simply through panic. No longer trusting himself, he tries to make up with force what he lacks in control. We all do this. And in doing it, we get into trouble. We use more energy, injure the body, and destroy the pleasantness of our relationships with other people. Therefore, we know from actual development within arts particularly the tremendous value of a suspended ego, one which functions only within a comparatively moderate range, and that to the degree we are able to escape the determination to press things, to that degree we achieve the most. Therefore, we must say, ethically and morally speaking, the tremendous ego pressure, what we term excessive ambition, is not the best way to accomplish a particular end. And while there may be a lot of defense in favor of it, this arises from a general ignorance. If 10 men are looking for a job, and they are all ego pushers, they are all fighting with every ounce of energy they have, then theoretically, the one who fights the hardest will win. But if there were 10 men, 9 of them pushing with everything they have, and the 10th one not pushing at all, but using energy with consummate skill, he would win. The reason why an energy pusher wins today is because that is about the only kind of person we have in the field. He has no competition from a superior level of personal integration. So with everyone neurotic, the one with the most dramatic neurotics appears to be successful. But with all the others, he is going to disappear before his time. He will only be a statistic, but we are not always able to explore these statistics correctly. They're not available to us. But the daily paper is rather helpful in these fields of research. We see them drop out one by one in this tremendously intensive program of energy waste. Now let us suppose that instead of doing this pushing, that the individual, first of all, finds a cause. Every man is a champion looking for a cause. When he finds that cause, he has a great deal of integrity and value to bestow upon it. Now, if the cause is no good, then you really do have to defend it to the bitter end. The poorer the cause, the harder it is to sell. Now, sometimes a great cause is hard to sell.
Damn.
In fact, some great causes are impossible to sell outside of a proper time allotment. That which cannot be done today may be done 100 years from now. But there are some causes against which resistance is so great that it is almost impossible to advance them. But here we have two factors also introducing themselves. If the cause is no good, and we fight for it, as a salesman trying desperately to make a sales record selling a product which he knows to be inferior. To do this takes a compromise with his own integrity and a great deal of overselling by psychological pressure within himself. He is trying to compensate for the weakness of his product, assuming that if he is strong enough, he can drag the product with him. The second type of person is the one who is perhaps dedicated to a hopeless but necessary cause. A cause that is so far beyond the probability of fulfillment that a kind of martyrdom is almost inevitable. However, this person is in a better spot than the first one. At least he believes in his own cause. And from this alone, he escapes a certain degree of conflict. And he is very much able to think in the terms of Woodrow Wilson when he said that it is better to fail in a cause that must ultimately win than to win in a cause that must ultimately fail. So the person with a true cause that is real gains a certain strength from within himself with which to battle the pressures of circumstances around him. But if the cause is no good, he has no strength from within or from the outside. Having decided, therefore, that he must have a cause, and whether we know it or not, we all try to have one. The next problem is to attempt to justify this cause to ourselves. Before we can sell it to another, we must believe it. To try to sell something we do not believe is psychic suicide. The more energy we put into it, the more interiorly we are ashamed of ourselves. This division is not good. If, however, we do believe the cause to be fair, the product to be worthy, that we are actually performing some kind of a common service in the distribution of that product, then we may enter into the transaction with some spirit. Large corporations today are trying definitely to sell their products first to their own salesmen. They are trying desperately to prove to the men who represent them that they do have a good product. And this is becoming essential to the maintenance of distribution today. With the tremendous amount of sales force, the average corporation cannot keep an inferior product a secret. It is bound to get into the grapevine. They cannot afford it. So they try to convince everyone that the product is good. This is psychologically also the basis of our personal decisions. We must believe that we ourselves, as products, are good, that the things we want to do are essentially right, that the principles we stand for are essentially true. If we have this confidence in ourselves, we do not need to use any energy selling ourselves to ourselves. If the product is such that it requires such energy, it is not a good product for us to handle. This is the first saving, is the clarification of this value situation, the detection of a cause, and the recognition that the moment we place ourselves under the leadership of a cause, we allow this gradually to come first. And it is therefore important that the cause be worthy to come first in some respect. If it is not reasonably worthy, we are likely to wake up someday and see that we have given our entire life to a cause that was not good. This may be a greater shock in advancing years than we are able to sustain. Grief and disillusionment often terminate our earthly careers. The next point, after having determined that the cause is good, is to get the magic out of it. Now, it's always pleasant and nice to read about the East Indian fakir who is able to grow a mango tree and have fruit on it in 15 minutes. This is nothing in the terms of American thinking. We sell the fruit before we plant the seed. One of our big problems is the love for speed. Our problem is whether it is well done or not, do it quick. If you do not do it quick, your competitor will do it first. This type of problem presents us with an element of magic. We like to think of ourselves as magicians, succeeding where others have failed because we have some mystic formula in ourselves. This is usually wishful thinking. Nearly any value or cause that is worth supporting or worth dedicating our lives to the advancement of has to build slowly, quietly, and in an orderly manner. Nearly every cause worth being affiliated with also demands something from us. The individual who cannot meet these demands legitimately begins to waste energy struggling with them. A man who opens a certain store and discovers that he must be his own bookkeeper and finds that he cannot make a single entry, let alone double, is already in trouble. He can go on and try to fabricate some kind of a bookkeeping system of his own that no one else can understand and which he hopes the government will never be able to understand. He may hire an expert to do the work for him, but now he must work for another man, in this respect at least. Or he may realize that his business is going to require this type of knowledge and settle down and acquire it himself. Causes make us work. They make us learn in order that we may administer these causes properly. If, however, instead of learning, we bluff, we're in for more energy problem. It takes far more energy to hold up a bluff, to maintain the constant fear that it will be exposed, the constant worry that arises from knowing that we do not know what we are doing. Such worry will shorten life and hasten psychological emergencies. A good cause, therefore, immediately imposes the need for ability. And ability is the subtlest and simplest way of meeting the ambition pressure. If our ambition causes us to equip our natures for certain attainments, then these attainments come with the least waste of energy. If, however, we are not equipped and must stab in the dark at 100 things, hoping that Providence will guide us through or that a happy accident will save us, then indeed we are under tremendous energy strain. Fear comes in, doubt, grief. All these dangers destroy the security of our inner self-estimation. We know we are not capable, therefore we worry all the time. Then, assuming that we have met these various phases of the matter with a certain amount of intelligence, when we come finally to the gradual growth of our cause, if we know that it cannot grow more rapidly than common sense permits, we will save ourselves another waste of energy. We will stop wondering and wishing. We will stop wishful thinking. We will no longer try to force the processes of life and nature. We will accept the fact of the matter that we must judge progress according to the unfoldment of law and life in things, and that we are not magicians, we are actually working persons, striving to build, and we cannot build more rapidly than we can properly place one stone upon another. The only thing that will result from haphazard, hasty building is a wall that will ultimately collapse. For failure to watch, or from too great haste, we open ourselves and become vulnerable to a number of defeats and a number of reverses, simply because we have not made each step important and made sure that the future always rests upon the solid foundation of that which has been accomplished. As soon as we observe that the foundation is undermined, we come into a crisis. More energy, more time, more resources must be expended. Here again is danger of trouble and sickness. Out of all of this background thinking then, and presuming that we have a certain determination to do something worthwhile, we discover gradually that it is not necessary for us to use a great deal of energy to achieve almost any end that is necessary. It is not the amount of energy. It is the direct application of adequate knowledge to a problem. Some years ago, a very famous lawsuit tied up the courts of this country in committees and the government. It involved government transactions for weeks. The lawyers argued back and forth. Nobody seemed to know just what the law was on this problem, and everyone was looking for a loophole to get through. And it went on until it seemed as though the private corporations involved and the government were going to be in for a terrible bill, involving not only tremendous legal fees, but a result not satisfactory to anyone. In this emergency, someone had the idea of calling in whom they regarded to be an outstanding jurist for a final opinion from the top. So they called in Charles Edwin Hughes. And this prominent lawyer, jurist, judge listened for exactly 15 minutes to the disputing factors, told them what the answer was, and walked out. His fee was $10. And in a few moments, everyone realized he was right, that was the answer. Charles Evans Hughes knew the answer. Therefore, there was no more energy. He could have gotten into the argument for weeks and perhaps have been ill as a result. But knowing the answer, he quietly moved through the situation. That was the end of it. It is this same problem in energy all the way along. The problem is to save your life by knowing the answers. And if you can do so, you will have energy for a great many more purposes. If you can realize that argument will never solve anything, that the actual answer lies always in your knowledge being adequate to your need at any given time. Also, if your attitudes, basically, are adequate to the ethics of the occasion, you will also find this energy saving. You will discover that the success of enterprise, and your own success along with it, the adjustment between you and society, does not require this endless problem of fearing, criticizing, doubting, hating, hurting. These things arise from false, basic relationships with life. And the more false these relationships, the harder we have to fight them, and the more miserable we become. One simple attitude on most of these problems is that truth and error exist. Error being a deficiency of truth in a situation. Actually, truth needs never to be defended, for the truth of the thing is itself immortal and inevitable. It may never appear within a certain situation, but the reason why it does not appear is because the situation does not provide for it. The situation is itself dishonest, or unhonest, or essentially wrong. And under those conditions, truth simply withholds itself, refuses to be present in a negative and destructive compound. On the other hand, error is indefensible. You can do nothing with it. If everyone in the world agreed on it, it would still mean nothing. Because error must ultimately be fought out in nature itself. The individual can bluff his error perhaps for 40 years. Ultimately, his error will kill him, or destroy him, or bring him to failure, because the error cannot win. And the proof that it loses is in the damage that it does. The person may achieve some particular ambition that is wrong, but if he does, it will ultimately turn upon him and afflict him terribly. He cannot win. Therefore, the effort to push error into a position of truth is a total loss of energy. It is an effort to justify some form of wrongness in which the individual is not willing to admit frankly that he is a highwayman or a thief or a crook, but decides to try to conceal this by involving it in some form of complicated ethical subterfuge. But if his process, his relationship, his situation is wrong, nothing that he can do will change this unless he himself chooses to do that which is right. Thus, right need never be defended. It merely need to be accepted. Wrong cannot be defended, and any effort to defend it is a total loss of life. So our tremendous energy expenditures trying to fight for the truth or against the error These energy expenditures are not meaningful, nor are they productive of anything. The way in which truth is best defended is by being allowed to express itself. That which is true will always be manifested if man does not interfere. If we do not put false things in front of truth, the truth will not be obscured. If then we find that the truth is obscured, we have only a simple decision to make, and that is, do we wish to reveal the truth and allow it to lead, or do we not wish to? The answer is not, however, so simple in result. If we wish to reveal the truth, we place ourselves in the strongest possible situation as far as our own health and life and security are concerned. If we do not wish to reveal the truth, as we make this decision, let us accept its consequences. Let us accept sickness, broken homes, sorrow, disillusionment, pain, mental disease, and a mass of character infirmities that will inevitably result from the compromise. We must accept them, and we must blame no one else for them, for they result directly from the individual choosing wrongly. Now, it may be that in the beginning he chooses without realizing that he has chosen wrongly. If this is the case, and he is honest, it will not be long before the consequences of his mistake will reveal themselves rather clearly. He must then have the courage to change his ways, for it takes a great deal of energy again to keep a mistake alive, and very little energy to let it die. Always also we must decide whether we want to die for the mistake or would rather have the mistake die and let ourselves survive. There are thousands, millions of persons every year who die as martyrs to their own mistakes, simply because once having made a mistake, they have not the courage or the integrity or the vitality to correct it. From this, and this is only more or less a survey of the situation, we come gradually to the Zen realization as we find it in Asia. Namely, that if we move with the law, we move with principles. If we are only doing those things which are real or valuable, we can accomplish them by what is called effortless effort. Now, this probably does not actually mean that there is no effort at all, but that there is such a minimum of effort that where the facts of things are evident, where the courage of man is real, where the integrity of the individual is founded upon internal principles, and where security exists inside rather than dependency upon security outside, where the person is right, achievement, progress, success, attainment, individuality, all of these things are maintained by what may be called effortless effort. This means that they are simply allowed to be themselves. The individual simply permits himself to think as he thinks. And if his thinking is solid and right, his thoughts will guide him along the way of his problems. His emotions, vitalizing only that which is worthy of his emotions, and only in a proper way, will not turn upon him with a destructive power. We know in nature, for example, that emotions, like thoughts, come under the censorship of their own consequences. We know that a simple, quiet, cheerful, loving attitude toward life is helpful in maintaining not only personal integration, but social integration. that the moment an individual is unkind, he is doing something to himself. And later when he goes to a psychologist and is psychoanalyzed, all this unkindness flows out of him like poison. He knows this. He realizes that no matter what anyone does to him, he cannot afford to be positively hateful for any reason whatever. If he is allowing himself to nurse a grudge or to perpetuate a grievance regardless of motive, he is digging his own grave. When he knows this and acts accordingly, tremendous amounts of energy waste come out of his life. He is no longer giving himself to the perpetual nursing of negative attitudes which cannot do him any good. Now this brings us perhaps to the next point in the situation, and that is the effect of this, we'll say, relaxed approach to pressure upon individuality. If we do not fight, is someone going to walk on us? Are we going to be trodden underfoot? Are we going to be imposed upon? Are we going to be exploited? Will others take everything from us? In other words, to what degree can we maintain ourselves without defending ourselves? This all depends upon our own relationship to fact. If the individual is fairly certain from experience that the attitudes that he takes are truthful, factual, and actually real, if the principles for which he stands are actually good, he does not have to fight for them, because these principles fight for him in another and mysterious way. The only time the individual is in danger of having his individuality destroyed by relaxation is when the individuality itself is false. The individual who is less efficient, less organized when he relaxes, was never organized anyway. Actually, he merely had an intellectual group of allegiances, patterns that he kept alive by energy, but patterns which had no relationship to his own interior life. If his values are straight, he handles them just as well when he relaxes as when he is tense, in fact better, because tension must interrupt and undermine his intelligence in the administering of his energy allotments. The moment he thrashes around trying to save a situation, he loses it and himself with it. The tremendous, immutable, and inevitable power of fact is the only thing any of us has to depend on. Therefore, our relationship with fact is the basis of our security. The moment an intemperance or a prejudice or a false opinion or an intolerance, and the moment any of these attitudes take us away from fact, they take us away from essential strength. The moment we lose essential strength, we must push. And the moment we push, we are exhausted. And the end which we attempt to attain by pushing cannot be attained, inasmuch as it is some way wrong, or it would not have forced us into this situation. Now, there are many people who say the moment we reduce our individuality, we would have a slowing down of all of the important projects of life. I question this very much, and as much as man has always been a relatively active creature. Sometimes he is lazy for a while, But usually in the end, he turns back to creativity because it is a value within himself, something that he cannot utterly deny. In the personal life of the individual, no one is imposed upon because he relaxes. He is imposed upon because he is stupid. And stupidity, relaxed or under tension, is still the same thing. We can be thoroughly imposed upon the moment we become angry. Whom the gods would destroy, they first make mad. The moment we get mad, we are all ready to be defeated. We know that a prize fighter who loses his temper, loses his advantage in a ring, because he becomes the victim of pressures which destroy his skill. And in all problems of life, the moment we lose this sense of equilibrium, we lose our perspective upon problems and then open ourselves immediately to defeat. Individuality is not demonstrated by energy push. Individuality is demonstrated by an organization of mental and emotional faculties which leads to certain gifts, certain endowments, certain abilities, certain aptitudes, through the cultivation and development of which we become individual persons. We are not individuals because we get mad quicker than someone else. Nor do we win an argument because we get the first and last words. We actually win only if what we know is superior. If we know this and we know it to be superior, the argument ends before it starts. For that which is superior also estimates the result of its own impact upon that which knows less than itself. And anyone wise enough to win an argument is usually too wise to start one. It isn't necessary. Because we are arguing, trying to prove to people something that they either know because of experience or must discover because of experience. And even if they agree with us, they will continue to be the same. Actually, to instruct where instruction is acceptable is wonderful. It is a gracious acceptance and a gracious giving. But this does not require energy exhaustion. It is when we are trying to force people to do what we want, and perhaps we are right and perhaps we are not right, that we have to fight. And it is an individuality that cannot stand on its own feet, that has to be supported by every ounce of energy we have. So quietude and organization do not destroy individuality. The individual is not submerged because he doesn't fight. He is submerged because he has no clear interior sense of values. It is impossible to deceive the individual who knows. But it is not necessary that this should always end in confusion and struggle. Ultimately, as Zen points out, interior security results in right action. It results in the individual immediately taking the reasonable attitude and refusing to be moved from it. It causes the individual to set his patterns in a way in which the full security of these patterns is available to him. It is not that he is going to be imposed upon. You cannot impose upon an individual whose inner life knows the score. You cannot cheat the honest man, but you can cheat another man who is desperately anxious to cheat you. I know a case of that some years ago in which a man came to me who was in very miserable condition, someone had been tapping his telephone wires, and he was ready to sue everyone. So I asked him, how was it that he allowed this to go on? Well, he said, I didn't realize it was happening. I thought it was the group that was tapping their wires for me. Now, this type of situation, of course, sounds utterly ridiculous, but it was true. He was trying to get information, and so he was rightly indignant when the other persons used the same means. It is this in this situation, to know more than your adversary, to keep cool and calm when he starts, and to have no interior determination to exploit him any more than you are willing to let him exploit you. Permit you to relax entirely and be yourself. He can do nothing that it will hurt you. You have no desire to do anything that will hurt him. The energy saving here is incredible. Now, of course, in some decisions it takes quite a while to be sure enough and true enough and wise enough to save all energy. But the theory behind it is that we should be working in that direction. The modern scientist today studies the early life of man, particularly the prenatal epoch and the childhood and adolescent periods, and the scientist says we cannot understand this. In nature, compared with other forms of life, and with the same period of prenatal growth and early development, the human being should live to be 150 to 200 years old in perfect efficiency. What happens to him? His interior psychic stress patterns are coming to be recognized as the cause of his early demise. These patterns, reacting upon his body, result in most of the ailments that plague him. He simply destroys himself.
Dang.
And he does it with a good heart on the ground that everyone else has, therefore it's the fashionable thing to do. But he pays for this fashionable procedure, often with 15 or 20 years of invalidism in the latter part of life. Years which perhaps he will not recognize in time, but which he must later endure. It is therefore important for him to decide whether he should go on the old traditional way and suffer because others do, and try to fight his way through a fight in which millions of others are putting all the energy they have into it also, and lock this energy in the most wanton waste that has ever been known. For man's waste of energy is like his waste of money. Today we are wasting on materials which we hope will prevent war. Enough money, could it be turned to other directions, to advance our civilization and culture 100 years in 10. But we are fighting for old, worn-out concepts, trying to fight our way through a situation which ultimately must be sustained by truth alone. What we need mostly in this world is interior, intelligent honesty. And with that, these problems would be solved. And they would be...
On that note, I'll be back. We'll watch the rest of it later, maybe, possibly, I don't know. But yeah, I'll let your boy with. I'll talk to y'all motherfuckers later. You dig?